Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Albert Barnett Facey. Albert Facey was born on the 3rd of February 1919 in Bunbury, Western Australia. Affectionately known as Barney, he was the oldest of 7 children born to tramway driver and First World War veteran Albert Facey and his wife Evelyn. Barney grew up in the small community of Wickerpin, where his father raised sheep and grew crops on a soldier settlement farm. He received his education at the local state school before returning to Perth in the 1930s. There, he and his father worked as truck drivers in the lime kilns at Wanneroo. At the outbreak of the Second World War, Barney was working as a market gardener in the city. Barney and Facey enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 23rd of July 1940. He was assigned to a group of general reinforcements as a private and was sent to Northam Military Camp for a period of training. There he joined the ranks of the 2nd 4th Machine Gun Battalion in November 1940. In mid-1941, Private Facey was moved to Adelaide for a brief period before moving to Darwin in October 1941 with the 23rd Brigade. He embarked for active service from Darwin on the 30th of December that year. Facey and his comrades travelled via Port Moresby, but were returned to Australia in early 1942 following a Japanese attack on Rabaul. Their convoy was turned around, travelling via Sydney and then through to Fremantle. They embarked for a second time under escort, arriving in Singapore on the 26th of January 1942. By this time, a series of rapid victories by the Japanese in the Pacific throughout 1941 had resulted in a series of withdrawals by Allied commanders. By the end of January 1942, the last of the British Empire troops had been evacuated to Singapore. It was not long before Private Facey and his comrades were drawn into action. On the 8th and 9th of February 1942, Singapore came under attack as Japanese units landed on the northwest of the island. Fierce fighting ensued as the Allied troops fought to maintain control of their positions. By the 15th of February, however, they had lost access to Singapore's reservoirs and were forced to capitulate. Later that day, Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, commander of the British Empire forces in Malaya, surrendered to the Japanese. Singapore had fallen. Australian units suffered high casualties in the battle for Singapore, taking more than 3,000 casualties. Over 100,000 men became prisoners of the Japanese. Among the missing was Private Barney Facey. Having no information on his fate or whereabouts caused significant anxiety to his family in the years that followed. His father, Albert, later reflected in his autobiography, A Fortunate Life. When Singapore fell, Barney was reported missing, and we didn't hear anything of him. It was a terrible strain. Evelyn would sit down at the kitchen table to write to Barney while he was missing, and tears would run down her face onto the paper while she was writing, not knowing if the letter would ever reach him. Barney remained listed as missing in action for nearly 4 years. It was not until May of 1945 that his family's fears were realised and he was confirmed to have been killed in action on the 15th of February 1942. He had been driving a truck alongside 4 others when they came under attack from enemy aircraft and received a direct hit. All 4 of them were killed instantly. His family paid tribute to their son and brother in a memorial notice placed in the West Australian newspaper in 1946, which read, "Far from home and loved ones, in a hero's grave he lies. God knows how much we miss you, Barney dear, as it ends the 4th long, sad year." Private Barney Facey was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Albert Barnett Facey, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, That concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.